So welcome everybody to our fifth, I believe, MFIN Virtual Network Meeting for 2020. And I'm glad to have you all here. We are going to do our usual welcome acknowledgements and review the agenda, which we're doing right now. We'll go through some introductions and have a chance to connect and do our virtual Apple Crunch celebration. And then we'll hear from a really great lineup of speakers with some updates from the field to share more about their experiences in farm to institution and how they've adapted, some of the needs that still exist, some of the offers that they might have to share with you all. And then we'll continue the conversation in smaller group discussions, and we'll round it out with MFIN updates before we adjourn for the day. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Michigan Farm to Institution Network, we are a space for learning, sharing, and working together to help farm to institution programs grow here in Michigan. And we've been around since 2014. We also coordinate the Cultivate Michigan local food purchasing and tracking campaign. And we're really working to help institutions meet the 20% by 2020 goal. That was our original mission and reason we got started. And that goal is part of the Michigan Good Food Charter. And we're happy to be a part of the Michigan Good Food Charter Summit series here today. And we are working towards updating and likely expanding that goal to include other priorities as well. And given the pandemic, our management team, our leadership team, our advisory committee are all really kind of full up on responding to pandemic needs. So we're not going to have all of that wrapped up nice and tidy by the end of this year, but we will continue on that process next year as we're able to. And for those of you who are new to the group here, feel free to join the Michigan Farm to Institution Network. You can see the URL there, myfarmtoinstitution.org. Oh, sorry. I also wanted to give a quick description of the structure that makes this whole network work, because we have a whole lot of people involved in this effort. And I am Colleen Matz. To formally introduce myself, I'm the Farm to Institution Specialist at the MSU Center for Regional Food Systems, and I coordinate the Michigan Farm to Institution Network. We have a trustee management team who is going to be helping with our small group discussions today, and with all of the stuff that needs to happen to make this meeting go. Zaire Parati, who's one of our members of the MFIN management team, she's our Farm to Institution data manager. She will be our moderator today, tending to tech issues and looking at the chat box and calling some things out from the chat box. So we'll use the chat box as much as possible today, especially since we have a bigger group. And I'll be facilitating the meeting. We're glad to have our old friend, Lindsay Scalera, joining us today. She is also with the MSU Center for Regional Food Systems, the Community Food Systems Collaboration Specialist. And she is here on behalf of the Good Food effort, Good Food Charter effort, and the Summit series that this meeting is a part of. She'll be managing our recording and closed captioning, and we're also using a whole bunch of the photos that she provided back in her time when she was the co-lead for the Michigan Farm to Institution Network. And other members of our management team who we have on the line here: Garrett Ziegler from MSU Extension, Mario Borgman, also from MSU Extension, Abby Harper and Abby Palmer from MSU Extension, and Noel Balachek from the Center for Regional Food Systems. You'll also see that we work closely with the Michigan Department of Education and Michigan Department of Ag and Rural Development. We have a really great advisory committee of farm to institution practitioners, and those are some of the people who will be providing updates from the field today. Our membership is now over 650 people engaged in the Michigan Farm to Institution Network, and our Cultivate Michigan membership just went up to 228, increased by 150 members, thanks to a partnership with Chartwells. All right, so to get going here, we wanted to also give you all a chance to introduce yourselves. So if you wouldn't mind in the chat box, sharing your name, your role, and your affiliation. And Zaire, what do we have coming in?
So of course we have Noel Belichick. We have Larry Weber from Food Bank Council of Michigan, Angel Zell, Abby Palmer from MSU Community Food Systems. We have Jenna Siegel from the Midwest Farm to School Regional Lead. Wow, a lot of people are coming in. We have Troll Rice. We have Claire Smith, Jen Silvery, Keith Softer from the University of Michigan. We have Grant Fletcher, the Director of Healthy Living and Sustainability. We have Linda Moore from Health Department of Northwest Michigan. Janie Noah, Service Member, Food Corps. David Rose. We have Connie Watson from Bay Mills Indian Community. And Josh Gordon. Oh, there's Carolyn Thomas, Child Nutrition Consultant.
She made it in. She was texting with me.
Yep.
Great.
Awesome. Janine, Director of Sustainability, Creative Dining. We have Xavier from Spectrum Juvenile Justice Services. We have Michelle from Produce Safety Technician for Northwest Lower Michigan. Who else we have? I think Diane Connors, Senior Police, or I was going to say police, Senior Policy Specialist. Brandon Singh, Michigan Farm to Freezer. I definitely know him. Matt Channing, Agricultural Preservation Specialist from Kent County. There's people everywhere. Awesome. Who else we can?
Yeah, we've
Christina Wilson.
We've got a really diverse group of folks here. And I think some of the names and affiliations you read off, they really represent kind of the breadth of the work that we do and the different kinds of partners that are engaged. So for those of you who Zaire wasn't able to read a name off for, thank you for joining us, everyone. And I'm still texting with a few folks to try to get into the meeting. So working on that simultaneously. So thank you, Zaire, for that report out. And I just wanted to acknowledge, as we all are taking time here today, that this is really special to have time together because so many of you are so busy with managing changes and getting food out to people and families that need it. So I wanted to kind of wrap this up with an acknowledgement about where we are today. And this actually comes from something that we were working on in the center. And I really like the wording of this. So I'm going to swipe it, but I helped to write it, so it's okay. But we find ourselves in the midst of a global pandemic. A growing Black Lives Matter movement calls to defund the police, increasing urgency to address climate change, and surging unemployment in this new economic recession. And all of those things are also pointing to questions arising about the national food supply chain. And we have worked together and through our Good Food effort collectively to build a stronger Good Food Foundation, especially here in Michigan, over the past number of years. And these crises, which are all intertwined, though, still require our local and regional food systems to be even more connected, even more equity driven, and more resilient than ever before for our children, families, and communities to thrive. So our thoughts and hearts are with those who have been affected or have had friends and family members directly affected by the virus, but there's lots of fallout from it too. and our hearts are with you. We know that many of you, as I mentioned, are on the front lines and supplying and providing food to children and families who need it now. So we really want to thank you for your tireless work to adapt and to still get food to people who need it. So just wanted to set that out there as a way to set off our meeting today. So thank you again for taking the time to join us. Okay, your job today is to actively listen and participate through the chat box when you're prompted. It's probably going to be easiest for us to do most of our conversation over chat box today because we do have 60 people registered for this meeting. So we're going to do some more practice with using the chat box, but I'm going to turn it over to Mariel and Garrett to take it from here.
Perfect.
Thanks, Colleen.
Go for it, Mario. Start us off.
All right. So for those who are not familiar with the Michigan Apple Crunch, this is an event that we hold every October, kind of ties in with Farm to School Month and Food Day, which also occur in October. But basically, it's a celebration of Michigan's harvest, in particular apples, because we grow a lot of them and they're a favorite. So this is typically a farm to institution focused event this year because of the nature of the pandemic. We're also inviting people to crunch as households and as social groups. So it's a little bit more inclusive beyond the traditional farm to institution scope. And there's been a great response of people creatively crunching during this time, either in person or virtual. And we thought what a great opportunity to come together and crunch with our MFIN management team and MFIN network today. So for those that have an Apple, you want to go ahead and grab it now. For those that don't, you can pretend to crunch or do something else that is fun, make a funny face as we're crunching, just in celebration and to bring a little joy to our day this morning. And you can see in the chat box, Garrett has asked if you could share your favorite way to crunch into an apple. So that doesn't necessarily have to be actually crunching into an apple. You'll see some people are putting apple cider and things like that. So Zaire will take a look at those and share some of those with us. But let's go ahead, because I've been wanting to take a bite of this since the meeting started. If everybody can hold up your apple and we'll do a countdown. And my internet's a little choppy, so maybe Garrett can do the countdown because I'm gonna have a little delay here.
Sure, I'll jump on there. All right, ready? On the count of three, or countdown from 3, 3, 2, 1, crunch.
This is the best piece of air I ever had since I don't have an apple.
I forgot to unmute myself to just.
Yeah, maybe I should have muted. You can hear my crunching.
I think that's okay.
All right.
Apple
Thank you
pie,
so much,
apple
everyone, for
cider.
participating in that collective crunch.
Yum. Yep, thanks. We'll keep an eye on the chat to see how you like to crunch or like to enjoy your apples in the fall.
Okay,
I
apple
personally
pie, apple
slice
sauce.
But
What else do we
Nobody said
have in the
apple
chat
fries.
there?
Nobody's saying apple fries. I'm shocked about that. But we have homemade apple sauce. We have, I saw an apple pie, and of course, apple cider, of course. Troy Rice says bobbing for apples with the kids. Janine says chopped mac in my oatmeal. So I'm assuming that's chopped apples in your oatmeal. We have Keith Soster who says honey crisp slices with caramel dip. Oh, yes. That's my only way to eat apples. Cheese and apples. from Diane Connors reminds me of my mom, her go-to meal when she didn't feel like cooking. We have Abigail Harper who says donuts, of course. We have Michelle who says pan-fried apples with cinnamon and coconut oil. Cool. We have someone says baked whole with raisins and cinnamon. We have, let's see, apple crisp with some vanilla ice cream. We have Claire Smith who says with almond butter. And there's a lot of people who agree with the cheese and apple cider glazed for my smoked chicken. You go ahead, Xavier. Yes, think outside the box. We have Christina Wilson who says apple nachos with chocolate, caramel, honey, and granola. Wow, apple nachos. That is awesome. We have Gwen who says an apple strudel. Wow. That's just amazing. Me too, Mariel. I'm definitely getting inspired. The diversity of apple crunching definitely reflects the diversity of our group. Bourbon poached apple and cream. Ooh, nice. Yeah, this is really cool. This is really awesome. I may want to try some of these out myself after the meeting. With cheese and a Manhattan from Grant Fletcher.
Hey.
Oh.
All
Yeah,
right.
this is really awesome, Clive.
That sounds good. All right. Well, thank you for crunching with us. And we're going to keep things moving with our updates from the field. So we've got a really awesome set of speakers who are going to share with us today. I've asked them to kind of do the impossible and keep their comments to just 3 or 4 minutes. I'm sure any one of them could take up this whole time to talk about how they've made adaptations to respond to the coronavirus. And since we have such a great set of 10 people, we're gonna have to keep these pretty short and sweet. So we're going to get started. I will be introducing them as we go, and they know the order that they're in. So hopefully they'll all be ready to go if we have everybody on the line today. And that'll be my way for nudging on time a little bit. So I'll be doing my best to keep track. Okay, so our first update comes from Caroline Mishniak of Eastern Market, who is also a MFIN Advisory Committee member. And last we heard from her, she was still on the road as usual. Caroline, are you there? Caroline, we can't hear you if you are there.
Looks like she's still on the line, but she's I can try to get her to unmute.
And I can always come back to her.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Hi, Caroline.
Hi. Sorry about that. I'm like dialing in because my service is not amazing. But I'm happy to give an update from the field from Eastern Market. I don't know if Colleen gave an introduction, but I'm the Grow Eastern Market program manager there. And we are a food hub kind of program that works with small farmers and mostly restaurants. And obviously, since this spring, there has not been a ton of business to be had with restaurants. So this past March, we really pivoted in the direction of food boxes. And I'm sure lots of people on the line know about what a food box looks like. But our food box found itself being as a curbside alternative to our market, and also a way to get produce, basically like a multi-farm CSA share box in the hands of our Eastern market shoppers. So we started off the season during like the height of the pandemic this spring, doing about 300 boxes a week. We've kind of transitioned throughout the spring and into summer. We were awarded a USDA grant. That's the Farm to Families grant that some of you guys are probably familiar with. And so we actually upped, like in a separate lane, we're doing 2,000 boxes a week of mostly Michigan, but not only Michigan produce. And those were being donated through various nonprofits in the city of Detroit. And the big kind of like piece for that programming is that we went through a GAP audit. And then also we were able to get some Michigan farmers that we work with GAP certified themselves. So definitely a big learning experience, a lot of time and effort this summer spent on that. We were also lucky to work with Center for Regional Food Systems and Henry Ford Hospital Dearborn to get some support to do food boxes for healthcare workers this last spring. And we're kind of, we transitioned out of the way that was working. We also were working with Farm to Freezer, Brandon, who's on the line with that. And then we are planning kind of a new iteration or a second phase of that going into the winter. So food boxes, food boxes, food boxes. We still have been working with some grocery stores and some other, restaurants and people who are doing carry out, but it really has changed the way that we're doing business this season.
Thank you so much, Caroline, and thanks for keeping that short and sweet. We hope to have some time for questions at the end of all of the speakers, so stay tuned. Next up is our friend Sarah Monty calling in from the UP. She's with the UP Food Exchange and Marquette Food Co-op and also a member of the MFIN Advisory Committee.
Hi, so one thing I'd like to explain to the whole group is that some of the things that I present are actually the result of the whole UP Food Exchange, which the UP is a lot bigger than sometimes people realize, and there's a lot of different people who work on our committee. So while we work very hard on farm to institution, there's also a lot of activities we do around developing food systems as a whole, including direct to consumer work and things like that. So when COVID hit, we were really able to shift our direction and say, well, how can we help get this food into as many people's hands as we can? And if that's not through an institution that we're shut down and not purchasing, what are the other avenues that we can do this? And there were some really great projects that happened, both in terms of marketing and communication with consumers to let them know how to source food. We had members of the team, I think Alex is on this call from Taste the Local Difference, and they really moved fast to help connect people with websites so that farms could start selling directly to consumers in a more contactless way. And then we had groups that worked together both in the Western UP and over here more in the Central in Alger, who really thought about how do we get this food into the hands of the people who need it most while also creating sales for the farms. And so two different independent programs were started through our network that were basically collective CSAs that either were fully funded through a health foundation or had a sliding scale to let people pay what they could afford, but still have access to the best quality food around. So we're still working on getting the metrics from the folks who worked on that program to be able to share out how that worked and best practices, really. But we're really excited about how people pivoted quickly to allow that access. I think in some ways, we definitely got the food out there. It's not a new story for the UP. Like everywhere else, COVID-19 exposes all the weak parts of the food system that already existed and exacerbates them. But our supply lines that were already not great are especially bad right now. So one thing that we're really trying to think about for the future and like continue working towards is how do we grow the farm situation here. Right now, farmers are experiencing a great demand from consumers to the point where some of us, like some of the grocery stores that we work with, are having difficulty sourcing what they would like because it's being sold elsewhere. We also are seeing a huge bottleneck with meat processing. So for example, with beef, some of the suppliers are saying there's not going to be beef available until January. So stores are having to shift to other products that are not local to fill that hole. So we knew that processing was a problem here in the UP, and it's definitely become more apparent. So the good news is that it has really got everybody talking about this and the need to move more quickly on that kind of project. So I would say, you know, one of the things that I was really excited about is how the networks that we have already developed really allowed us to move quickly on projects together and to really hear quickly from people across the UP what they needed and to get those sales going, but also expose those supply line issues that we need to keep working on.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sorry for that feedback. Okay, John Fay from Gordon Foodservice and a MFIN Advisory Committee member is up next. I know he was on phone. John, are you there?
Yes, I am. So good afternoon, everyone. So my apologies, having some technical issues, can't join the Zoom meeting, but I just prepared a few things that Kelly, you'd asked me to on the different things. So the kind of the adaptations we've made, kind of similar to what Caroline and Sarah both said, going into and focusing in a lot on the food box program. We've had a lot of success in that area, coordinating with multiple suppliers and growers within our distribution network. And the numbers I'll share are beyond just the state of Michigan. So this is across our entire distribution network, but and beyond just fresh produce. But we've in the first two periods, we distributed approximately 1.6 million boxes of food throughout the various food banks and food hubs that we were able to partner with throughout this process. Of those 1.6 million, approximately 270,000 of them were fresh produce. And for those who are just joining, I manage the produce department for Gordon Foodservice in kind of the Midwest. And so of those 270,000 boxes that we brought into our warehouses and distributed, we only had one box that was liquidated out of all of those cases, which from a logistics standpoint, in terms of coordinating all of the orders, because everything was pre-booked, that was quite an accomplishment to make sure that everything got shipped out and distributed accordingly. And that could have, I don't know for sure, but that could have been even a damaged box that we may have damaged internally. I don't know for sure, but so we did have quite a bit of success in that arena to get the foods to the different organizations to actually distribute it to families. So proud to be a part of that endeavor to help through the pandemic. A couple of the adaptations that we've kind of been working through as a company is reevaluating our product mix that we offer to customers and trying to pivot to better meet their needs. So whether it is just overall, do we have the right product mix for their needs? Do we have the right pack sizes? So a lot of customers are asking for smaller boxes. So rather than a 25-pound box of tomatoes, we're offering a 5-pound and a 10-pound case to many customers, which have that's seen a lot of success and growth in those areas. And looking at other commodities in that same light. From a need standpoint, we're still struggling with our incoming vendors filling existing POs and really getting on-time delivery. I forget if it was Sarah or Caroline that mentioned just kind of the transportation side of it is still a challenge. Trucking is very tight right now. I've heard anywhere from for every full truckload of product that we have that we need to come into our facility, I've heard anywhere from 1 to 15 drivers are missing. So not missing, but for every one truck that we have, they can pick up 5 or 10 other loads or more from that same driver. So there's a real shortage on truck drivers, and that's been a shortage for quite some time. And we're really starting to feel the effects of that. And because of that, that's driving freight rates up and driving costs to the end user up as well. So not great for the end user, but it's just kind of a reality of where we find ourselves at the moment. And then one thing that from a membership perspective to understand as a distribution company, looking at our customer base to have flexibility, understanding that supply chain is having challenges. And so just because you always ordered a particular product doesn't mean that that is always available. I know, for example, on the school side, schools would oftentimes order multiple flavors of raisins, for example, a strawberry or a sour patch like strawberry or watermelon flavored raisins, and they just don't have the capacity to keep up with all of the demand. So the various manufacturers are limiting their SKUs of production. And then another example of that would be like for canned goods. We've had many requests for retail sized canned goods for customers to be able to create food boxes of their own to sell to their customers that are coming into the restaurants here or there. And the canners just don't have the capacity or they don't have the inventory to move through the food service distribution channel. So those are kind of some of the updates that that I have, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later on, as Colleen said.
Thank you so much, John. Appreciate that from the broadline perspective. And up next, Larry Weber from the Food Bank Council of Michigan. Thanks, Larry.
Hey, thanks for allowing me to be here. Well, I think I'll probably be piggybacking on a few people, Carolyn, and then also John on the boxes. The 7 food banks have been recipients of these boxes for the distribution to their pantries and their mobile distributions. But I gotta say, over the last 6 months, we've had to do some a lot of rethinking on how we do our own distributions. The food banks receive a lot of the product and then they go on to redistribute it to the food pantries. But obviously the food pantry is run by volunteer workers of people that, a lot of seniors are their labor force. So a lot of the food pantries, even though desperately needed, have had to close because of lack of staffing and what have you. So the food banks have moved to do more of a mobile and just arranging and minimize the amount of touch. So delivering to to church parking lots and doing their distribution through there. We've had some challenges with supply, the same as what John was talking about. The manufacturers over in the west side for canners. We've had some of the plants with COVID where they have a positive case and the plants are shut down. So the labor to the plants, steel and availability for even the packaging has been an issue. We've been lucky I think because of who we are, that we've been able to get the National Guard to support us and do some of the distributing. And when we desperately needing the repacking. We've had to call upon them, and they've been great. We've also had to look at a lot of the food service companies, distributors, John's included. Where it's at one time knowing that we were able to repack, that if we took a food service quantity size product, we could make it into smaller, more retail or family size products. But unfortunately, with the lack of volunteers and the lack of no touch, that became an issue. We've even had, we've had to scramble where I've had a distributor that had, 50-pound boxes of potatoes, and my potato farmers up in the north have capacity for repack because it was at the end of their season, finding a truck to truck it up to Northwest Michigan, have them open up the 50-pound boxes and then repack it into a 5 to 10-pound bags for, families to take home. So we've had some interesting ideas, and, luckily we've had some financial backing that's helped us. And then along with those boxes, we're on there, I think, the third round now for to the food banks. But we're also looking at eventually coming up, USDA, TFAP will probably be doing some reducing, I guess this is the best way, a lot of the trade mitigation product, and some of the bonus purchases at the USDA. It's an unknown right now, but we've also, with our distributing, we've partnered up with some groups that we really haven't had a chance with before. We've done some with the area agency on aging, where we've partnered up with the food banks have actually done some of the boxes, and then we've had those boxes delivered to their central offices, and then they coordinated with some volunteers for seniors that are homebound that weren't part of the traditional like Meals on Wheels, but didn't have the capability to get to the stores for food purchasing. So we've been able to do a couple of deliveries like that, sending them 27 to a 28-pound box directly to their home. But yeah, I think it's been a crazy, like I said, like John was saying, on supply. We call up our past vendors, and they'd like to help, but unfortunately, labor, supply, everything was just affected to, just had to be a little bit more creative to get things done. But we've been able to do it. I think that's it. I'm here for questions too on people that work with us.
Thank you, Larry. And next up is Glenn Knopfsinger, who is a food service consultant and a MFIN advisory committee member. Glenn, thank you.
Yes, hello. So I'm going to give a little bit of an update from the child care centers in the Battle Creek Community Foundation here in my local Battle Creek area, and the challenges that they've faced. Wide variety of challenges. I think most people have touched on. The challenges we had before are still there. They're just exacerbated to an extent that they're barely manageable. So if we go back into the spring, the centers themselves went through periods of close down and then staged reopening. And now we're back up to speed. There is a need for childcare. But if you go back into the summer, spring and into summer, that close down resulted in a loss of some staff. And then to come back up to full speed in the fall heading into school, the food service programs at these centers are about 50% staffed right now. So they're back up to the volume that they used to do, but they're faced with increased costs across the board. And in some cases, the revenue has taken a little bit of a lag to catch back up, and you have half the people doing the work. So that's challenging in and of itself. The programs were challenged before for the food service in general, but that business challenge, closings, reopenings, and then trying to get food in, they really are, they're strapped in being able to do any extra programming, such as local foods. to make the extra phone calls, to be able to find something that's it's been canceled or it's out of stock or it needs to be reordered. They really default back to, I've got to get this done. And the default tends to be a prime distributor or something that they're familiar with. So I've done some work with them to identify where we can streamline operations and understanding meal components. And this, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but I'll talk through this real quick. So we basically take a straightforward approach. The reimbursement rates for CACFP from the MDE program through the CACFP centers results in, if we run a high food cost of 40%, gives us about 76 cents to provide a breakfast, $1.40 to provide a lunch, and 38 cents to provide the snack. Now, if we break that down into components, what that means for local food is a half cup portion of fruit or vegetable has a high and upper limit rate of 28 cents for that portion. So I think there's some real challenges there. First, multiple small centers trying to buy wholesale case volume pricing and then distribute amongst themselves, and the extra staff, training, kitchen facilities that it takes to work with local food to process that in-house. Peeling, trimming, washing, portioning is a real challenge for these centers right now. They need ready-to-use products that they can quickly portion and get out to kids. And in the market, simple things like local blueberries, they're in the $7 a pound range if you're buying prepackaged goods. And we just don't have that. At tops, if we've done everything else and we're running efficiently, we can spend maybe two and a quarter per pound on all products. That's an upper limit for meat, for proteins, vegetables, fruits. So going forward, I think there's some real challenges to think about at this level, where we definitely want local foods fed to our developing children, our young children, and to have them learning about this in the classroom and understanding where real food comes from. That was challenging before, but now with the challenges that COVID has put on, I think we kind of need to take a step back and do a reset and think about how we can help. There may be some need for local financial support from groups like Battle Creek Community Foundation and others to make up that gap in the cost of local foods, and to be able to tell that story and to bring that programming to them in a way that they can use it. Yeah, so that's my update on the child care centers here in this area that I'm working with.
Thank you, Glenn. That's really insightful. Got my timer going here. Also, now we're going to hear from Xavier Jaramillo, who is with Spectrum Juvenile Services and a MFIN Advisory Committee member also.
All right, we've had our own little challenges. We ended up switching out to a 3-week rotating menu instead of 6 due to limited staffing and just supply chain issues. We're just limited amount of things we can receive. We also were part of the Farm to Families.
Xavier, it sounds like you have some background noise.
Okay, let me try to take the earpiece out and try to see if that helps a little. Take the earpiece off if that's.
That sounds better. Thank you.
Excuse me. Is that better?
Yes, much. Thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt
take the earpiece off. So we're also recipients of the Farm to Families program, where we ended up distributing about 3,000 boxes of dairy and vegetables and protein and chicken boxes to the Highland Park community. Most of the time I did that with a couple of my employees. We passed it out, and that's about it. We have no staff for the most part. Myself, my supervisor, and 2 other full-time employees. Out of traditionally we had 12 full-time employees here in our facility. So 6 days out of the week, myself and my supervisor, we actually cook most of the meals while trying to complete all the needed state paperwork that's required by us. And we're still being required by state licensing to do different assignments that's separate from the MDE program, MDE food system that we receive. So currently we actually have to go through a full environmental inspection. Even though Wayne County is not doing inspections, we still have to go find a way for Wayne County. We told it Wayne County will pay extra for them to come in and do an inspection because the state board requires us to do a licensing due to a young man passing away in a facility, not one of ours, nothing to do with us, but because of that incident, all state funded programs like ours has been extra restricted on what we can and cannot do with the residents and in our facilities. So that's what we faced. Visitations of residents, very restrictive. The kids, their families can visit, but they cannot touch them. They can see them through a glass, just like it will be in a penitentiary area. Even with that, a resident did get COVID from one of the family members who found a way to interact with a kid when security wasn't looking, and we had to quarantine that young man during that time. We've had a few cases here, nothing major. Few of our residents did get COVID through the states sending them out for family visitation off-site, and they came back even after but when they came back, they were put on quarantine in a separate unit. But we're usually housing about 160 residents when we're at capacity. We're currently at 100. And that's really low for us. Our employees are usually about 250 for our company in both facilities. We're probably around 75. So an average employee here at the youth workers, they work 80 hours a week, 40 regular and 40 overtime. So it's pretty taxing currently, but we're doing our best to get through it, hiring 1 or 2 persons here at a time who are not staying at home collecting unemployment. But that's where we're at. But we provide the best food possible. As you see in the background, sometimes we smoke, we grill, and give the residents something different every time. I think I'm doing something different this week with them. With dinner, I'm gonna give them one of the meals this week. They're actually gonna get White Castle burgers that I was able to get in from GFS. So just mixing up a bit and give them something, a variety. Even though we were working in 3 weeks, I'll mix it up and throw some specials in there with them. All right, thank you all for listening. I can't stay on very long because I have to head on to work on finish up dinner, but look forward to hear back from you guys later on in the next meeting.
What are you making for dinner? What's for dinner, Xavier? Oh, I think we lost him. We'll move on. Thanks for joining, Xavier. Okay, Carolyn Thomas from Macomb Intermediate School District is also a MFIN Advisory Committee member. I'll turn it over to Carolyn.
Thanks, Colleen. Hi, everyone. I will be as brief as I can and still let you know what's happening in our school districts. So as you know, when we had to close in March, many people only spent the weekend and turned around their food model, did a complete change of feeding kids in the classroom to feeding everyone virtually. And that continued really through the summer. We have some of the districts here in Macomb and St. Clair that have been doing parent bulk distribution pickup throughout the summer and in the school year. We also had some others, and in my own personal case with the district that I am the chief administrator for here at the MISD, we've been feeding children at their home 3 days a week. So we have about 350 staff members involved in this logistical monolith, as I like to call it. It's like the Goliath, but it's a whole lot better than it was. We have 110 buses that are out on the roads, delivering straight to our students. And that went very, very well. But it was a way for our immunocompromised students to not have to get out, for their parents not to have to worry about how they were going to put these kids in the car and get exposed, possible exposure. Well, then when school started, you may know we have a ton of different models going on in the districts right now. There isn't one district that is just doing business as we used to know it a year ago at this time. We have at least 2 or 3 different food service models going simultaneously in everyone's district. We have, in my own case, we're feeding the students in person who want to be here. And within that realm, I have 18 programs. So we have 5 that have decided to do cohorts. So we have a food model within that. So we're feeding them in school. In the rest of our programs, in the other 13, we're feeding them 5 days a week here. But in these other 5, we have students that are only coming every other day. So they have to go home with food so that we can provide them with the meals when they're not here. And so we're doing that. We also are sending food home on buses for our virtual remote learners who cannot get to our schools. We are also doing parent bulk distribution pickup on Wednesdays for a week's worth of breakfast and a week's worth of lunch. And we're not only open to our ISD families, we're open to the community. And that's pretty typical of all of our locals. Everybody's open to the community. We have switched to, thankfully, with the USDA's flexibility, we're running the extended summer food service program now through June 30th, and all of our students are eating free for this school year, which makes a tremendous difference in what we can offer. Our produce needs have, fresh fruits and vegetables have more than doubled with our virtual models, with our cohort models, and even in school with the safety precautions we have to take. We can't really have fresh fruit and vegetable bars yet, so we're doing a lot of individually wrapped. And the good news is, because of the micro purchasing threshold that we're under in our public schools, we can purchase up to $10,000 in a micro purchase to our local farmer. So I know we've done that here 4 or 5 times already this school year, not to the 10,000, but for example, for our apple crunch, we went to one specific orchard and purchased all of our apples like we always have in the past. We've worked with some larger farmers in Macomb and St. Clair, and when they're harvesting, when they have extra, they generally will call somebody, and then I can kind of help make that connection. So we've had corn on the cob in some of our programs in school. We've been doing some Romanesque and some purple broccoli, which is kind of cool because then we can teach the kids that are actually in school. And we've been giving an awful lot of tomatoes to the kids that are virtual because they're so good this time of year. So we've really been working hard at that. Big challenges though are the complete lack of staff most people have in the schools. We don't have any district at 100% staff right now, but we're working towards it. And the other thing that we're faced with is when you have to isolate because you've been exposed. So that takes the staff away too. So we're kind of working through that right now. You're muted, Colleen.
Thank you, Carolyn. Something told me that that tomato photo was just right for you. So
perfect.
Glad to see that. And now we'll hear from Keith Soster from the University of Michigan, Michigan Dining, who is also a MFIN Advisory Committee member.
Hey everyone, I just want to point out that my background, the vertical garden, that's lettuce. So if anybody thought differently, I just wanted to clear that up. And those that know me know that I can talk. And so I actually prepared my notes and I'm just going to read those to you. Our Michigan Dining normally spends, or last year spent with the campus farm, $122,000, which equates to about 34,000 pounds of fresh produce. And so I want to just give kudos to the campus farm students. They've been a tremendous support, not only to dining, in the local food, but they've donated more than 1,800 pounds of fresh produce to the Maize and Blue cupboard. And so part of my responsibilities include the student engagement piece, sustainability initiatives, and then I have oversight of the food pantry on our campus. And so the idea of students helping other students initiative, and they certainly know how to build community. So some adjustments or adaptations that have been challenging for us. When students came back to campus, Michigan Dining limited the menu, and they also standardized them across the enterprise. And this was really meant to limit travel by students to keep them in their neighborhoods to prevent cross contact. And so not being able to offer salad bars and the variety of menu items was really frustrating, not only to the students, but the chefs and the staff who put a tremendous amount of work in menu development over the summertime. So we are working to transition from to-go meals, all to-go meals, to reduce our waste, which has doubled since COVID. And so, you know, when you have to package every food item and not allow anybody to sit in a dining room, that can be a real challenge. And so working towards introducing more local and sustainable items back into our menu is where we're at right now. And we hope to be able to do that and continue to do that throughout the rest of the academic year. I want to say this, one of the needs that has been identified is ways to educate our community during the COVID times. The attention on local and sustainable food education has really been diminished because of the angst related to other current events, Black Lives Matter, the election, COVID. Composting and our waste reduction has also been a big challenge for us because everything's to go. And the dining room is generally where we build community by engaging students and educating them through table tents or A-frame signs, cooking demos, that sort of thing. And so that's been an interesting time for us. I want to offer this as kind of tip or advice. We know that the college campus is really designed to engage students, not separate them from each other. And so building community is more important now than ever before because our entire community feels isolated. And that's just not the students, that's all of us. And so if I could offer advice, if you can, increase your attention to those in need and how you might offer support during these times. We have a saying at the Maize and Blue cupboard, if you don't need the resource, be the resource. And I've heard some great stories this afternoon from my colleagues about what they're doing to engage in the community and help support. I was reading an NPR article yesterday that said 1 in 4 families across the nation are food insecure. And so our work is important. I think we always knew that. I just wanted to remind people that we're an important part of the food system, and I applaud everybody's hard work and efforts. I know that we're the frontline staff, and so the angst and the stress is something we've carried with us since COVID began. And so I just want to say thanks to all of you guys.
Grant is up. Grant Fletcher from Bronson Healthcare. Interested to hear from a hospital how things are going.
Thanks, Colleen. I will want to highlight 3 things that we've experienced that seem to be going very well for us. And I want to preface everything I say with most of my comments would not be possible without our partners at the Kalamazoo Valley Community College Valley Hub, who help us stay in fresh local produce almost all year round. So they've been a critical partner in all of this work. Prior to the pandemic setting in, we were in the process already of ramping up a small commissary operation on campus. That was accelerated dramatically when we had to shut down all of our self-service options, and has resulted in us recognizing that we don't need to and probably won't bring back things like salad bars at our primary hospital campus. But we've found new and innovative ways to meet the demands of our customers, our retail customers who want healthy foods to go through the use of this commissary model. We had already established a small grocery store on campus, and after the pandemic set in, we saw probably more than a 50% reduction in the staff on the hospital campus who are our primary consumers. They make up 85% of the retail business that we do. So with more than half of the staff gone, we saw about a 25% uptick in the business of that grocery store. It turned into an incredibly value-added, highly utilized service for our hospital employees. And we've had a CSA on campus for probably 10 years now, which had waned, over the last few years. Its participation had trickled off, and again, after the onset of the pandemic, the participation in the CSA, I think, more than doubled. I walk by on delivery day now and I see more boxes than I've seen in 5 years. So the CSA participation has really been impressive over the last couple months. We tried a couple things. One thing that didn't work, we tried to reduce and streamline our inpatient dining menus, and it just sucked. It wasn't good. People didn't enjoy it. The quality wasn't there, and it really didn't gain us anything. We didn't really see any major efficiencies from it. But to be fair, we did not see the influx of COVID patients on the west side of the state that our colleagues on the east side saw. As many people have stated, we still have an ongoing need for labor. And then two takeaways that we've realized because of the pandemic and the financial constraints that it's placed on us, we had to do a deep analysis of the things we were buying. And as happens every few years, our local purchasing program comes under the microscope. And so we did a deep analysis and comparatively priced all local products, or local meats, produce, all these things, with similar products from broadline distributors, and found that a like for like, and oftentimes we couldn't even find something of comparable quality. Across a year, we're probably realizing about $130,000 to $150,000 savings for comparable products from broadline distributors, which was really exciting and really it allowed me to reinforce the importance of this work with the executive team at this organization. And we also, because of the manufacturing supply chain disruptions in the global marketplace, we took a really hard look at some of the things that we were offering that I generally refer to as food-like substances, and identified a lot of them that we're just going to eliminate from our menu and from our offerings. So we found some great opportunities to gain some efficiencies, reduce our inventory, and double down on our focus on high quality, locally sourced, real food. That's it.
Did we lose Colleen?
Yeah, I think she's muted.
Yeah, I'm trying to not make too much noise while the speakers are going, but then I forget to unmute myself. Hi, Janine.
Hi.
Janine of Creative Dining Services and also of the MFIN Advisory Committee. Janine, take it away.
Thanks, Colleen. First, I'd like to give a shout out to all of my network peers that are really doing such important work in food insecurity. I'm gonna sleep better tonight knowing you guys are on it. And I hope to free up some more bandwidth for myself so I can champion this more strongly than what we are currently doing as well. But this is so important and such a horrible, literally another symptom of COVID, right? I mean, we're all seeing it and experiencing it. So thank you. I'm so grateful for your work. The great thing about going last is that a lot of people have already told your story. I could almost do a copy paste of what Keith shared from U of M earlier. It's very, very much my scenario as well. But briefly, in mid-April, my personal role changed from being all things sustainability champion to can I head up our company's COVID response? And so that's been my life since about the second week of April. And so many things, all things sustainability, I had to literally put on a shelf for a while and really concentrate on operational logistics to really ensure, safe delivery of our services and products, not only for the tens of thousands of diners that we feed every day, but our own staff, which is precious. Not just that everyone is precious, but we went into this short-staffed. I mean, our industry as a whole is short-staffed. And so, you know, I'm seeing nods out there, and, you know, many of you have mentioned the staffing situation. Of course, it's only gotten worse, and I fear could get worse this winter, and more on that in a minute. But it really wasn't, I'm very, very proud of a playbook that we wrote and published. It's a 56-page manual, interactive, with about another 56 embedded, both proprietary and CDC, examples, templates, all kinds of resources, a supply chain, its own supply chain intranet for our company. It is our Bible. It is our operational Bible, and continues to be. We have weekly updates on anything that has changed, or best practices, or pivot is the name of the game. I've heard that word a lot today too, and we're saying it constantly, pivot, pivot. And so far so good. We at Creative Dining Services, we're located in 14 states at about 95 locations. That would be 14 different state executive orders. And we had about 2,000 employees. And that employee base has been impacted greatly. We are still operating at only about 60%. So many of our corporate dining locations have not reopened, and probably realistically won't until the spring or early summer of next year. So the impact of revenue, the impact to permanently and temporarily furloughed employees, all of that is just, it's been awful. It's been awful. However, we're managing. We developed a lot of employee resources for both current and impacted employees very quickly. I'm very, very proud of my company, of how we have managed the people services and the human element of this. But it's still sad. It's sad, and we're in this for the long haul. Sustainability started popping up for me again at the end of September, when I really needed to especially communicate to our students, why do we have to use so much packaging? Keith talked about this earlier, realizing that we need to do a better job of getting ahead with messaging on why we're doing what we're doing, and that these are temporary measures, right? It won't always be this way. We will reduce waste stream again, you know, eventually when we're out of our intense COVID response. We also were really trying to manage 14 different states' executive orders. I finally got smart and aligned everything with the CDC as the virus became more political. Aligning everything to the CDC made life a lot simpler and less controversial. And so nowhere was that more true in the state of Michigan. And I don't think that surprises many people that it became as political as it has been. Our next big concern is, in fact, we have all hands virtual training next week, is doubling down on PPE and distancing as we're getting into, whether it's just an uptick of the first wave, or we're truly getting into a second wave, and with cold and flu season on top of that. And then the holidays approaching, where we know we will have employees and diners that ignore some of the advice and probably get together with too many people. We're concerned about staffing levels in January. We're concerned about, as we all go back indoors again, what this means for us. And so we're looking at just really bringing that to the forefront again. Prevention. And our focus is just serving up nutritious, delicious, but especially safe food. And eventually really looking forward to what's next when we climb out of this. I think we're going to be changed forever, but there will be some wonderful things that we can bring back right away that will make both us and our diners a lot happier.
Thank you, Janine. And thank all of our speakers. Thank you all for taking the time to share a bit with us. It's hopeful in some respects, but really sobering in other respects. And I think it did provide what we had intended, which was a really good up close and personal look at how things are going out in the field. So I really appreciate hearing those updates. And we do have just a few minutes for some questions. I trust there may be some out there. So if you have a question for one or maybe a couple of our speakers, please type it in the chat now. I think we have time for just one or two.
No, right. No, right. No.
And if we don't have any questions, we can go ahead and move into our next section, but just wanted to leave time in case there were any. A lot to take in. All right then. Well, with that, we're going to allow for some time to connect in smaller groups. I see one thing in the chat now. Zaire, what do you see there?
This is from Grant Fletcher. Colleen and all, I forgot to mention, we experienced zero disruptions with our local supply chain thus far during the pandemic. Zero.
Right. Thanks for that note, Grant.
Colleen, could I just add something to that supply chain comment?
Sure.
That's really awesome, Grant, because here in K-12, and Glenn and can probably, and the other people here connected with K-12 can probably attest, we have had a tremendous issue with supply chain. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they need to supply the schools with more than one model. So we may need the same kind of food in a bulk setting for in-school feeding, but we need that very same item unitized in an individual portion pack, for example, for our virtual learners pick up for a week. And it's a real, it's a very coordinated dance, if you will, for these poor brokers and manufacturers to try and figure out how much do they produce of what. And especially as schools close and they reopen and we're all virtual. And I know that here in Southeast Michigan, virtually every school district is going back in person between now and Thanksgiving. So that's going to change the supply chain again. So I really am pleasantly surprised to hear that there's been zero disruption. We could, for example, order 100 cases of Bosco sticks for in-person feeding, and we may end up getting 5. So I see Janine nodding her head because that is the reality for us right now. So we have to really be fairly fluid and not as specific in our menu writing right now, because you don't want to deal with all the disappointment when we don't get it.
Thank you for that. Supply chain challenges, especially with things tied into the national and conventional supply chain. And we understand that a little bit better from comments here today. And then also what the local and regional supply chain can do and could do in the future to respond a bit better. So at this point, we're going to work on continuing the conversation in smaller groups, and each group will have one of our MFIN management team members included in it to help lightly facilitate the conversation. We are going to take some light notes here too, and whatever perspective you're coming from, we know not everyone is a farm to institution practitioner. We have a lot of supporters and advocates on the line too. Whatever your perspective, we're interested in hearing about what's one adaptation you have had to make that's been successful, what's an adaptation or adjustment that you've made that hasn't worked so well, what needs do you still have, and what can you offer other members who are doing this work. And that can be anything as small as a tip or a little piece of advice to a resource. So we'll be taking some notes here too, and all of our management team members have those questions on hand. So I'm going to go ahead and move y'all into breakout rooms in just one. Welcome back, everybody. I wanted to get this is my cat Winnie, who is an extrovert and likes to show up in calls. I wanted to get some high-level report outs, whether it's from our facilitators or from folks who are participating in the conversations. So let's start.
Colleen, it looks like we still have some people that are
not back yet.
Not back yet, yeah.
Oh, wait.
Here they come.
There they are.
Perfect.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. And Lindsay, did you want to hit record again?
Yep, it's recording.
Okay, great. Okay. Thank you all for taking the time and sticking with us. I know I have mixed feelings myself about breakout rooms, so I understand the feelings that come along with them when you're put on the spot like that. So thanks for sticking with it. And I wanted to take a moment to hear from our facilitators or folks who are participating in those groups. So I'll try to run through these by the groups as I have them. So Mariel's group, any high-level report outs, just one or two maybe high-level points? Mariel, you are on mute.
Sorry. Some of the really positive things that have come out of this are just discovering new opportunities for partnership and being able to be really nimble given the circumstances. And then, just some things to offer to the group as we move forward with this. We talked about maybe helping each other out by sharing processes or templates for crisis management. What's your backup plan, especially as we know we're going into a time where virus numbers are going up, where people are moving indoors, that sort of thing. And just keeping our own teams healthy and encouraging others to do that as well, making sure that we're not getting lax as the fatigue of the pandemic goes on, because that's really going to keep our institutional food service systems healthy, but also the supply chain as well.
Yes, thank you. And Noel, from your group, anyone want to share?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I have a couple of little tidbits I can share here. We had a couple of technical issues, but we did have some pretty interesting short conversation. Some of the themes we talked about was just the importance of partnering with local businesses and sort of, that showing that vulnerability to the community to help build collaboration. Another theme that came out was just the big challenges that we have right now with the digital divide in communities. So specifically, we were talking about Detroit and how tough it is to get folks involved using Zoom and conference calls when folks don't know how to use that sort of technology. And this is also an issue in more rural counties as well. So just rethinking those grassroots collaboration models is a challenge right now. And one offer that came out of our conversation was just an offer for product. We had Claire from Tefola on our call, and she's looking for schools and hospitals that are looking for granola, local granola. So if you need granola, you can connect with her.
Great, thank you. And Garrett.
Yeah, so we had a decent, quick conversation. We had Grant and Carolyn in our group, so both of folks we'd already heard a little bit from some of the work that they've been doing around this, but we just kind of had a chance to hear a little bit more. It was really interesting to hear from Carolyn talking about how in her world, nothing's really like, we were saying some of us were working from home now, and a lot of our work has adapted in that way. Those of us that don't work directly in food service, but in the food service world, they kind of had to continue on, in the office every day, on the front lines, really doing this work. And it's just kind of been like, she's like saying to her, she's almost like maybe not less mindful, but feels a little bit like her world hasn't changed as much because of the work that they've been doing has carried on. That being said, she said if you told her last year at this time that this would be the case, you never would have obviously believed that. And I thought she had a really great line that I'll share, is that it's it's amazing what you can do when you're forced to do it, and really that they've kind of managed through this without skipping a beat and keeping on has been kind of like the broad adaptations that they've worked through. Talked a little bit about what things might carry forward after this, any adaptations that really stood out for folks. And I don't know that there was really anything that stood out for folks, but I know some folks said that, before this, they were able to be a lot more creative with what options and choices they were able to add. And that they may actually be looking to carry on some of that, like reducing the number of choices in cafeteria foods for their food settings, just because there was, allows to be a little bit more efficient moving forward. We talked a little bit about 10 cents a meal, and we had some folks from the UP on our group that were trying to figure out how to implement 10 cents in some of the more rural, very small school districts in the UP, and what that might look like and how they can assist those districts in applying for that. So we had a little bit of offer from Carolyn, some of the advice that she's used working with school districts. So we had that kind of happening within the call, but I think that's something that we could definitely offer from folks in this group, some tips on applying for that 10 cents a meal, especially more rural school districts.
And that's a good transition to one of our UP friends, Abby Palmer, and maybe you can help out some of those folks who were wondering about how to implement in the UP. But Abby,
oh no, I'm one of them wondering. We're all wondering. Just kidding.
I get it.
So yeah, our group managed to talk a lot about how youth are leading the way in this moment, where programs that prioritize student voice and student choice on college campuses are able to really respond to student needs effectively. And, it's kind of our job to support that. We all do want to know or understand what the next step might be. And, we talked a little bit about offering and giving grace to make mistakes and to learn from it, because every day at work is a new day. Every week can feel like a new week. There's a lot of transition, of course, with, schools going back to in-person and then having to shut down for 2 weeks and then back to in-person, and to just try to be present and be open and be kind to yourself in the midst of all of this, and to look to the students who are dealing with some of these transitions better than adults in the ways that they value relationships. It's our relationships that really are the net that allows and shapes how we can adapt. So it was a very, very beautiful group, and I'm really, really glad we had a chance to talk.
Thank you. It's lovely. Abby Harper.
Yeah, we definitely, didn't get to fully explore all of the conversations being had, but there was a lot of wisdom shared in the time. We had some conversations around pride around the ability to adapt and get food out, even with the difficult circumstances. A lot of folks sharing about their ability to pivot pretty quickly and still prioritize local food in the services they were providing. So I think that just speaks to the kind of adaptability and maneuverability of some of these local systems. And then we also had a conversation around the limitations of choice and being able to meet people's needs around dietary preferences or restrictions, or prioritizing aspects of cultural relevancy in some of those choices. So we had a little bit of a conversation about moving forward, how to build in more systems of choice into some of those food box systems.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm writing some of these notes down just because I think this can make a really nice report back out to our community on some of the conversations and themes that we're hearing. So thank you all again. Thanks to our facilitators. And I wanted to wrap up with just a couple of quick announcements. Let me adjust this here. So it's hard to talk about things moving along as normal. We've certainly adjusted our plans here at the network, trying to respond and be aware of and thoughtful of all of the commitments that everyone on the line has, as you're all busier than usual. So not much on our calendar here, except for what's happening right now. And then in December, we have one more virtual network meeting. So I think, as you all know, it's National Farm to School Month, and our governor also declared this as Michigan Farm to School Month. So we're happy to be celebrating Farm to School Month along with the Apple Crunch, and all of that as part of our Michigan Good Food virtual summit time as well. So that's a really nice intersection of lots of different events and ways to celebrate in this time that is very hard. And as I said, we have a MFIN Virtual Network Meeting at the end of or middle of December 18th from 10 to noon. So mark your calendars if you'd like to join us for that. That'll be our last virtual network meeting of 2020, and then we'll send out a new schedule for 2021. And we've been meeting virtually like this for years now, for a few years. So this is not a pandemic adjustment. This is something that we've learned how to do, and hopefully we're doing it pretty well. But if you have any feedback on how to do this better, we're always up for hearing that, and how to maybe adjust to some of those communities and people that may not have access. So I'm sure we're missing them. And if we have any other creative ideas for how to bring our group together and have these connecting points, we'd love to hear them. So you can always visit our cultivatemichigan.org website for more event information and our featured food materials. And for those who might be just joining us for the first time, you can sign up to join our network at myfarmtoinstitution.org. There were a couple of things that I was asked to also provide quick updates on. The 10 cents application, as was referenced, is open, and that now has enough funding from the state to go statewide and to early care and education sites. It's still a competitive grant process, so there's still an application and selection process that the Department of Education manages, but we'll be able to cover the whole geographic area of the state. So our UP friends will be eligible to apply, as well as our friends in Detroit who haven't been able to apply yet. Also, Jenna Siegel was with us from the USDA Food and Nutrition Office and the Farm to School group there. And she wanted me to mention, she had to hop off early, but she wanted me to mention that the USDA Farm to School grant RFA, the request for applications, is also open right now. And that's something that we sent a notice about as soon as we heard about it. So I think I got that out on Monday, but there's certainly more information on the USDA website. And if you need any information or ideas or tips, you can always talk to me about that or talk to Jenna. We can connect you with her. And there are some USDA webinars that will be held to help people prepare for that proposal process, because it is a federal proposal process and a little challenging and lengthy that way. And also, Garrett and Mariel, did you want to give a plug for your Good Food Summit session?
Yeah, sure. Tomorrow we have a session coming up that Mario and I will be speaking on, talking about institutional food service purchasers' understanding of on-farm food safety. And that's a bit of a mouthful, but basically just we did a national survey and we'll be sharing the results of that. So those folks that work in supply chains, producers, and in institutional food service might find that interesting to hear about how folks are understanding on-farm food safety verification systems and certifications.
And what time did you say that was tomorrow?
Yes, 1 to 2:30. 1 to 2:30 tomorrow. Yeah, and Phil Britton will also be on that session of Michigan Group Gap Network, talking about our Michigan Group Gap program. And one last plug for our demographic survey. If you haven't filled that out yet, I just put in the chat box a little bit ago.
Thank you. Okay, so that does it for today. We're finishing on time. And we're sending our love to all of you with our little cherry heart there. Thank you for all that you're doing. Thanks for joining us today. And we hope to see you again in a couple months. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.